always check in with how I'm feeling. And I'm feeling ready. I'm ready to share openly my story. But I'm also feeling very vulnerable and raw. There's a British expression called in the buff. And it's the British polite way of saying, I kind of feel naked, exposed. You know, do you ever feel in the buff? I know I do right now with all of you. I also felt very vulnerable in Nepal. This farmer had approached me and he was looking at me, he pointed at me and he said, if this one looks like that, what do the rest of them look like? And he meant me without my hands or my legs. And one of the porters traveling with me said, one of them doesn't have a head. How can we sail through these moments of vulnerability? And we can, you know, we can be unstoppable. And we can crush those feelings of barriers, uncertainty, and fear. I feel in the buff so often that I've kind of created a new meaning for it. And so for me, buff means B-U-F, barriers, uncertainty, and fear. So let's jump into that first barrier and crush it. Believe you are capable. I remember being out and about as a very young girl. And when it was the 70s, I was very, very young. And I would be climbing stairs wearing my artificial legs. And people coming by would see me and they would start to cry. And that was the 70s. And how I feel now with COVID passing and isolation is it feels a little bit like we've gone backwards in time, like the 70s. So, thinking of this morning as I was driving in, I went to Tim Hortons to get myself a tea, a coffee shop. And I pulled up to the first window, and I'm driving a new car. And I am a professional speaker, I have my master's in business, so I hope I presented capable enough when I said, can I please have an extra large steeped tea for milk? And she said, please drive to the next window. So I drove to the next window this morning, and I reached out to get my cup of tea, and the coffee shop window person, she just looked at me and she said, oh, no. I can feel that. You could probably feel that. It's funny how blindsiding words can be. And I imagine many of you have felt those moments. And even though they're long past, it's like, even though it was this morning, I still have goosebumps. And we all face these fears. We all have these moments, these barriers. There's elder care, there's child care, there's studying, there's learning, there's generating conversations with resistant people. There's naysayers, or worse. The naysayer this morning was me. I was the one that when she said, oh, no, I let that impact me. We get to believe we are capable. I want you to believe you are capable. First, crush your barriers. Believe you are capable. Secondly, we get to figure through those barriers. And those barriers have been a part of my everyday life. That coffee shop window person, she just didn't know. And so I changed up the conversation. I dialed it back and I just told her, I said, I can do it. And she handed me my tea. And I drove off. And I left her amazed that I could hold a cup of tea. She doesn't even know that I'm a World Cup sailor, a double black diamond downhill skier, over 100 scuba dives. I fly airplanes, I jump out of airplanes, I ride horses, camping, dancing, art. She's just amazed I could hold a cup of tea. Believe you are capable. First, crush those barriers. So now let's get into those rivers of uncertainty that still overwhelm us even when we're believing we are capable. I remember feeling massively uncertain in Nepal just before I was about to cross the Modai Kola River. This Modai Kola River suspension bridge was at 850 meters above the river. And the suspension bridge had rickety planks. There were planks missing. The lines on either side of the suspension bridge were over my head. And I crossed the bridge on my knees. I was walking without my legs. And so there were no lines beside me. And I was feeling massively uncertain. Uncertain, can I do it? Uncertain, am I going to make it? And so when I got across the bridge, the last thing I wanted to do with all this adrenaline of uncertainty pumping through my veins, my heart was going ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. I definitely didn't want to rest. So I carried on ahead a little bit of my group. And as I carried on ahead, I came across this flabbergasted farmer. And it basically looked like a walking hay bale with spindly legs. It was kind of like SpongeBob SquarePants. So as he approached me, he was looking at me. And he says, if this one looks like that, and he was pointing at me without my hands and my legs, it's like, what do the rest of them look like? And one of the Nepalese farmers that had been traveling with me for days, 9 days, he replies, one of them doesn't have a head. This ridiculous joke. But see, they were speaking Nepalese, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. So I was standing there, and everybody around me, all these Nepalese people were just laughing. And I was uncertain of what was going on. I was uncertain of what was going to happen next. And a student, a Nepalese student, translated for me, and she told me what he said. One of them doesn't have a head. It's pretty amazing in Nepal that someone who lives in these conditions of impoverished state, they don't have legislation, they don't have awareness, they don't have the amazing technology of my prosthetic legs or my high-tech wheelchair. And I didn't wear my prosthetic legs climbing, I did it on my knees. The Nepalese, they just don't have it. Just to give it some context, when you think about it, in Nepal, they kind of treat people with disabilities like they treat their animals. In Nepal, they'll decorate one donkey, all bells and whistles and colorful saddles, and then the other 18 donkeys go hungry, but they'll follow the colorful, nice-sounding donkey. So in Nepal, there's only so much food, and they don't believe that people with disabilities are valuable contributors, even though many are. They don't believe that the people with disabilities can contribute despite being amazingly resourceful. So in Nepal, I didn't see a lot of people with disabilities while I was there. But wherever I went, the villages ahead had heard that I was coming. Everywhere I went, first thing in the morning to bedtime at night, people were staring at me, gathering. Talk about feeling the uncertainty of being stared at. Being together for those 9 days had bridged the gap for these Nepalese porters, where he could make a joke about something completely ridiculous. It seemed to me that if they could do that in Nepal, with all of those disparities, we can do that anywhere. We get to exceed uncertainty. Feeling uncertain is okay. We get to feel the feeling. Feeling uncertain is no excuse for inaction. So first, bust your barriers, believe you are capable, and secondly, exceed uncertainty. Feeling uncertain is no excuse for inaction. So finally, we get to face those fears, lean into those fears. I remember when I was on this cliff and I was on my belay line, and as soon as my knees, my stumps, left the edge of this cliff, I remember feeling the rush of fear come over me. And somebody shouted, all of a sudden, somebody said, "Tracy, are you on the ground?" And I'm thinking, no. And then I remembered, someone's on my lifeline, my safety line, my belay line. Someone has my back. Earning independence is not alone. Earning independence is earning interdependence in facing our fears. My stories in Nepal emphasize how we can be unstoppable with insights to overcome feeling in the buff, with insights to overcome barriers, uncertainty, and fear. Barriers. Believe you are capable. Uncertainty. Don't avoid failure. Exceed uncertainty. Feeling uncertain, we get to feel the feeling. But feeling uncertain is no excuse for inaction. And fear, flip it, jump, go for it, fly. How do we skateboard through those moments that crush us, those barriers? Believe you are capable. And step into and leave on the dock those backwards ideas and step into that confidence of believing you are capable. And skateboard into taking it on. Skateboard into exceeding uncertainty. Don't avoid failure. Feeling uncertain is no excuse for inaction. And feel the fear. and lean into the fear and slip and jump. Embrace the possibility you can do it. The purpose of being in Nepal, the purpose of crushing barriers with my fellow travelers, the purpose of climbing the Himalayas of Nepal, the only four-way amputee who has ever climbed the Himalayas of Nepal, male or female, they or them. Jump out of those airplanes. Just make sure you know who packed your parachute. All of you today listening, we are packing each other's parachutes. We are listening to TEDx for possibilities and making them our purpose. Go be unstoppable with insights to crush your barriers, exceed uncertainty, and face your fears, and become the superheroes you always knew you were. Thank you.